Hello and welcome to this brand new edition of Global Lens on News9 Live with me, Neha Khanna. As always, we have a packed show for you. Let's get started with our big focus. Despite growing criticism from US President Joe Biden and massive protests at home against his handling of the Gaza war and failure to bring back the remaining hostages, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu remains defiant. He has vowed that Israel would not relinquish control over a strategic corridor along the Gaza-Egypt border. In a combative press conference, Netanyahu presented control of the Philadelphia corridor as a primary war aim, entrenching a position that has emerged as a key obstacle to a ceasefire deal. This, even as his closest ally, President Biden, said on Monday that while he was close to presenting a final proposal for a deal to release hostages held by Hamas in Gaza, he did not think the Israeli Prime Minister was doing enough to secure such an agreement. Biden was speaking to reporters at the White House after Israeli forces over the weekend recovered the bodies of 6 hostages, including a 23-year-old American Israeli from a tunnel in Gaza. That has sparked criticism of the Biden administration's Gaza ceasefire strategy and ratcheted up pressure on Netanyahu from Israelis to bring the remaining hostages home. Since Sunday, swelling protests and labor union strikes have gripped Israel following the discovery of the 6 hostages' bodies. And analysts say the weeks ahead are unpredictable for the Jewish state. But Netanyahu is known as a political survivor. Even now, he and the hard-right nationalist members of his cabinet are working to shut down the legal protests. Though the fact is, this tumultuous movement has been building up for months now. Israelis today are galvanized by growing frustration, waiting for Netanyahu to cut a deal with Hamas to bring home from Gaza the 101 remaining hostages, including 35 who are believed to be dead, according to data from the Israeli Prime Minister's office. As the Israel-Hamas war nears the first anniversary next month, there are many, including in Israel, who believe the Netanyahu government has failed to achieve most of the primary objectives of the war and has lost the plot. The angry protests across Israel and the clashes between protesters and authorities in Tel Aviv are a manifestation of that. Even Defense Minister Yoav Gallant's public condemnation of Netanyahu's negotiating tactics, calling him a disgrace, is a clear reflection of deep rifts within the government. The challenges Netanyahu faces are multiple. His unprecedented coalition cabinet has extreme right nationalists, Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir and Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich. This is a pair who routinely threaten to collapse his coalition if he is seen as softening on Hamas. Knowing their time in government may be limited, they focus their leverage on policies like expanding settlements that build their own base. Then there are many who say Netanyahu is fighting for his own political survival and dragging out the Gaza war may be part of that strategy. Netanyahu's unmatched political survival skills have kept him in office through massive protests even in the past. Few will be willing to bet that he is about to throw in the towel now. The question is, how long can Netanyahu hold on for? Meanwhile, Britain has announced that it will immediately suspend 30 of its 350 arms export licenses with Israel because there is a risk that such equipment might be used to commit serious violations of international humanitarian law. That's what Foreign Minister David Lammy has said. Lammy says the decision to suspend the licenses does not amount to a blanket ban or an arms embargo, but only involves those that could be used in the ongoing conflict between Israel and Hamas.
Hundreds of mourners lined the streets of Jerusalem on Monday as the parents of killed American-Israeli hostage Hersh Goldberg-Polin drove by in a procession to his funeral. Goldberg-Polin was one of 40 people taken hostage from the Nova Festival during the October 7th attack by Hamas. His body was among those of 6 Israeli hostages recovered by Israeli forces in Gaza over the weekend, triggering a wave of grief and fury and nationwide strikes that have shut down much of Israel. Israel's military said they were recently killed by Palestinian Hamas militants. Rachel Goldberg-Polin is the mother of Hersh.
I think we all did every single thing we could. The hope that perhaps a deal was near was so authentic it was crunchy. It tasted close, but it was not to be so. Those beautiful 6 survived together, and those beautiful 6 died together, and now they will be remembered together forever.
On Monday, flights, transport services and hospitals were severely disrupted as protesters called for Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to bring the remaining 101 hostages home from Gaza, underscoring deep divisions in Israel over his approach. US President Joe Biden said on Monday he did not think Netanyahu was doing enough to secure such an agreement. Biden said he was close to presenting his own final proposal for a deal to bring hostages home. Netanyahu has faced months of protests and pressure from his own defence minister, as well as senior generals and intelligence officials. But he has insisted on maintaining Israeli troops in key points of the Gaza Strip after any ceasefire.
Government is not an international court.
British Foreign Minister David Lammy announced the suspension of 30 of 350 UK licences to export arms to Israel on Monday, saying it did not amount to an arms embargo.
I'm heading to a national security meeting right now, and then going to Pittsburgh. And so checking on following up on what's happening in Israel, and then I'll be off to Pittsburgh.
Are you planning to present a final hostage deal to both sides this week?
We're very close to that.
What makes you think that this deal will be successful in a way that the other deals were not?
Hope springs eternal.
Mr. President, do you think it's time for Prime Minister Netanyahu to do more on this issue? Do you think he's doing enough?
No.
Mr. President, what is your reaction to the demonstrations across Israel? What is your reaction to the demonstrations?
I'm going to get the detail when I walk in, and I'll talk to you after that. Okay? Thank you.
Do you have a message for the hostages' family, sir?
Yes, I've spoken to the American hostage. I spoke to his mom and dad, and we're not giving up. We're going to continue to push as hard as we can. Thank you.
All right, let's introduce our guest on Global Lens tonight. Dr. Zakir Hussain, Middle East expert, is with us. We also have with us Major General Ashwani Sivaj, defense analyst, and in a moment we're going to be joined by Itai Melchior, Middle East expert and former executive with the Israeli National Security Council. Welcome, gentlemen, to Global Lens. Dr. Zakir Hussain, let me begin with you. What do you think Netanyahu's options really are at the moment? President Biden has said Netanyahu is not doing enough to secure a ceasefire agreement. There's growing anger against Netanyahu at home over his failure to bring back the remaining hostages, especially since the discovery of the dead bodies of 6 more hostages. But going by Netanyahu's utterances, he remains defiant. He goes on talking about finishing off Hamas. He's also prioritizing the Philadelphia corridor over anything else right now. How do you think this is likely to pan out for the Israeli Prime Minister, who really seems to be running out of options right now?
I think that he does not feel that he's running out of option. He's trying to intensify his operation to gain more credibility at home. Rather, he may lose this, but he is claiming that Philadelphia corridor on the west and Jordan Valley and the east are essential to ensure Israeli security on one hand. On the other hand, he is getting leverage from former President Trump that go ahead and finish the task while Biden administration is not in position to take any action, though he can take if he stops supplies of arms, as said by the Israeli defense minister while visiting to USA, that Israel cannot continue more than 5 days. So Netanyahu is taking the leverage of both the parties in USA, as well as there is no effective resistance back at home. So he will continue, and he thinks that he has all options to continue the war, and he thinks that he will succeed. But in reality, he is not succeeding. He is pushing Israel into a greater war, where Hezbollah and others are turning the war into a war of civilization. This is a never-ending war is going to unfold here. Iran is still taking its time to attack and has not announced its program. While the Russian forces, Putin is also supplying arms, advanced arms and weaponry to Israel and to Iran, and Iran is shifting that weapons to Hezbollah. So right now it seems that Netanyahu is at upper hand, but in the medium to long term, he is not in that position to contain the war.
All right, let me go across to Major General Ashwini Sivaj now. Major General Sivaj, you know, if you look at how this war has unfolded over the last 11 months, there are many who argue that Israel is actually far from achieving its stated military objectives. One of which, of course, was to bring back safely all the hostages. There are still at least 97 hostages that remain in Gaza. And as you know, there is a lot of anger at home being directed at Netanyahu, and his closest ally, President Biden, also has expressed his impatience with Biden on multiple occasions. He's even now saying, I beg your pardon, Netanyahu is not doing enough to secure a deal. What do you think Netanyahu's strategy here really is?
Yeah, very correct, Neha. There is no doubt Netanyahu is under a tremendous pressure. His options are very limited. And what basically Israel has stated military objectives, there were two of them. One was to completely finish Hamas, and the second was to take back the hostages. So none of these objectives actually has been met. In fact, they have not able to blunt the military capability of Hamas more than 60%. 40%, say 30 to 40% still there. And hostages, about 100 are still with Hamas. And after the 6 dead bodies which have been recovered and they have been brutally murdered by Hamas, there is a tremendous pressure which is now building up on Netanyahu domestically. And they want that hostage deal has to be done with Hamas, and you must get back the hostages. But point is that Netanyahu has thinking slightly differently. One is the Europe pressure can make tremendous impact. No doubt the UK has stopped the export of weapons to Israel. Also, indirectly, Joe Biden is putting pressure on Netanyahu, but that pressure is not to that extent. I don't think Joe Biden is so serious in putting pressure, because it will make tremendous impact on November election, which is coming, because Donald Trump is trying to say that he is totally with Israel. So therefore, though he's showing that he's putting pressure, he said this statement, Netanyahu is not very serious in having proper negotiation and strike a deal. But certainly he is not putting pressure the way the UK has put. Now, what are the options available as far as Netanyahu is concerned? One is that he's been telling everyone, and even domestically, that in case if you now have a negotiation with Hamas, and there is a ceasefire and Philadelphia corridor is not sorted out, then the threat of Hamas will remain. Because that from Gaza to Egypt, there is a tunnel from where the weapon and the ammunition can come in, which can be a cause of concern. So therefore, this corridor is very essential for the security of Israel in future. This is what Netanyahu is selling this idea. Now, whether it will have an impact domestically or not, it doesn't seem as on today, because domestically the people are coming on the street. They want this hostages back, especially after the brutal murder of those 6 hostages which body has been recovered. Now, my point is how long he will able to sustain this pressure of domestic pressure. That is a mute question. The pressure of Europe as well as US, he can sustain, because the US is not very serious in putting pressure. Joe Biden is putting pressure just to show that he is not very happy, but not more than that. He cannot stop exporting the weapons to Israel. No doubt Israel has a limited stockpile of the weapon. They can't fight more than a week, but then that cannot happen. They can't leave Israel to the mercy. They will keep on exporting their weapon. In fact, America stands to gain by exporting weapons, because their military industry complex is working very fine, because there are a lot of weapons which are sold in Russia-Ukraine war and Israel-Hamas. But certainly, to me, it looks like that the domestic pressure will make a tremendous impact. How long will he able to sustain this domestic pressure of not bringing the hostages and having deal? That is the crunch and I suppose that will dictate what will be the future course of action in another about 2-3 days. Because the point is that the point which Netanyahu is going to tell about the Philadelphia corridor, there is a merit in that. There is no doubt there is a tremendous merit. But the point is that that merit cannot sustain too long because there are too many things against him. And another thing very important is the moment there is a ceasefire, and then the domestically he becomes very weak because in case there are some elections, then Netanyahu.
So we'll talk about that. We will talk about that. Though I agree with you that the growing domestic pressure seems to really be the biggest factor right now that Netanyahu has to contend with, much more than what the United States might say. Our Israeli guest is also with us at this point. Itai Melchior is with us from Haifa in Israel. I need to take a quick break here, but we will go across to Itai and our other guests after this quick break.
Fast.
My God, isn't she your daughter?
Yes.
She's playing football. This is boys' game. Make her study. If she doesn't get a good job, she will get a good match. Will you win the world by playing football?
Yes, auntie. My daughter will win the world by playing football.
Let's go to Germany.
World's largest football talent hunt, News9 Indian Tigers and Tigresses. In association with DFB Pokal, Bundesliga, BVB and India Football Center. Train and play matches in Europe. Register now and fly to Germany. IndianTigersandTigresses.com.
Why is the state not looking at putting an embargo on that?
As a Telangana person, I will not accept.
How do ordinary folks deal with this?
Joe Biden is not going to be the Democratic presidential nominee.
I made my choice. Kamala Harris. She's experienced. She's tough. She's capable.
I took on perpetrators of all kinds. Predators. So hear me when I say, I know Donald Trump's type.
I am the one saving democracy.
He has tapped in to the fear and anxiety about demographic change in the US.
This polarization in the United States. Some people are even suggesting that there could be a civil war.
You are this unable to solve your own domestic problems. You have no right to claim to be anybody else in the world, and we're moving into a multipolar world where the United States will not lead.
This and more. Streaming on News9 Plus. Subscribe and get free vouchers.
Welcome back. You're watching Global Lens on News9 Live with me, Neha Khanna. Let me now go across to Itai Melchior. Itai Melchior, since Sunday, we've seen massive protests erupting across Israel following the discovery of the dead bodies of 6 more hostages from a tunnel in Gaza. There is a lot of anger that's been directed towards Prime Minister Netanyahu, because it's not just the families of the hostages, but a lot of ordinary Israelis seem to blame him for the death of these hostages and have been very critical of his handling of the war and failure to bring back the remaining hostages from Gaza. Now, whatever the United States may say, whatever other countries may say or do, the biggest question right now is, how is Netanyahu likely to deal with the pressure at home, which is certainly mounting?
Yes, Neha. First, I just want to explain to your viewers, it's a bit difficult to understand what the atmosphere in Israel was like on Sunday. There has never been a real stop and think about it. Since October 7th, we've been living in turmoil. First there was the attack, then there's a war and everybody worried, and then there's the hostages, and lots of tension rising. But what happened and the bodies that were rescued, that were just murdered shortly before they were found, it was like a punch to the stomach for everybody. The atmosphere in Israel, everywhere you went, was sour. People didn't know how to feel about it. It was a frustration and hello.
We can hear you, Itai. Go ahead.
Okay, sorry. So the frustration was huge. People didn't know even how to express it. People went out onto the streets spontaneously. You saw people walking with Israel flags and with yellow flags, and in every junction you drove by, there were protests, and the feeling was sour. And I think that is also what, in the end, compared Netanyahu to do the press conference he did last night. Now, you were asking about the political situation. In the end, if you ask me, the biggest threat to Netanyahu's government is actually not the issue of the war or the hostages or the Philadelphia or one of those issues. Because in the end, every poll shows the majority of Israelis understand in their brain that currently we need to stay in Philadelphia. But in their gut, they're saying we need to do everything, and there's a kind of a contradiction we're living with. So I think that the press conference Netanyahu did yesterday, on one hand, was aimed for the public to bring back some trust, but also to send a message across both to Hamas and Sinwar to explain that Philadelphia is off the table, and also a bit to the Americans, and he was asked about it in the follow-up questions, with his feeling that the Americans at this situation should apply more pressure on Hamas than pressure on Israel. Politically, internally, he has a mandate for whatever he chooses. If he chooses to do a hostage deal, even if it includes a strong withdrawals from his red lines, I think his coalition will survive it. Because the other opportunity is that if he doesn't, in the next election, some of his parties in his coalition will not even get into parliament, and for sure not in coalition. So I don't think they will break the coalition on that. And we've seen already in the previous hostage deal that they didn't leave, even though they were making threatening noises that they're against the deal. So I don't think that is his worry. And actually, the biggest tension in the end for his government, and I think I've said before on your show, I believe he will go for elections in 2025, a year ahead of time, after ending the war and bringing some peace accords with neighboring countries and further away countries. But the biggest threat to his coalition is that he won't be able to put through the budget for 2025, which has to pass by the end of the year. A lot of pressure from the extreme Orthodox parties on that front, and that could actually be the demise of this government.
Okay, very interesting. Multiple pressures that Netanyahu faces really at the moment. Dr. Zakir Hussain, if I could come back to you this point, you know, a lot is being said about the Philadelphia corridor. As Itai just mentioned, that, you know, from the security standpoint, Israel believes it's absolutely essential for it to have control over the Philadelphia corridor, and it wants to send out the message to Hamas that Philadelphia corridor is absolutely non-negotiable and off the table. And he says Israelis understand that too, but at the same time they're angry with Netanyahu for his failure to bring back the remaining hostages. So there is that paradox, there are those contradictions. But for the benefit of the viewers, if you could explain to us the significance of the Philadelphia corridor and why this may have become a hindrance in achieving a ceasefire agreement with Hamas.
Philadelphia corridor occupies on Egyptian border, and Israel says that Hamas has built tunnels behind, and through that it brings supplies and it may export the hostages there. But the argument of Netanyahu is not sound, because he is also launching attack on West Bank. But I said that he's saying that occupying the Jordan Valley is also equally important. So on both the front, he is trying to prove that Israel wants these two areas just to ensure its security. It is nothing but dodging from the ceasefire. And what it answered that domestically he will not be pressurized by the ultra right-wing parties. So he's carrying on that. What I think that Netanyahu understands that till U.S. election happens, he has leverage to continue in that operation, but militarily Netanyahu is not been able to successful in crushing Hamas or either Hezbollah. To my understanding, the Egypt is not ready to accept also. The meeting, the center of talk has shifted from Doha to Cairo, perhaps on Philadelphia negotiation. And what I think that Netanyahu is trying to dodge all these things.
Okay. Sir, could you unmute yourself? We've lost your audio. Can you hear me, Dr. Hussain? Okay, I think we have a problem there with his link. We'll try and go back to him. Major General Ashwini Savash, let me ask you this question. Is Netanyahu using the Philadelphia corridor negotiations as a pretext to stall a ceasefire agreement? Does he want the war to continue at least till after the US elections?
Neha, one can't say it 100%, but then there seems to be one cause of concern. That Philadelphia corridor is very important for the security of Israel. Remember in 2005 when the Israel troops have come out of Gaza corridor, that is the time it was given to Palestine Authority. But in 2007, Hamas has taken over that. And what Hamas has done is that it has constructed a number of tunnels which connect Egypt with the Gaza Strip, and therefore ammunition, weapon and all are coming from Egypt. For a moment, for a discussion sake, if in case no sort of a compromise is on a Philadelphia corridor and no negotiation is there, it means that whatever was the threat on 7th October, that threat can again build up. Because the point is that in case they are able to communicate with the Egypt and from there weapon ammunition can come, then this will always have a problem as far as the security of Israel is concerned. This is a very narrow strip, about 14 kilometers only. But certainly it has got lot of meaning as far as Israel's future security concerned. Now the question comes yet, will he able to get this negotiation on his own terms? That is the biggest problem, because one thing is very clear, that the churning effect which was to take place in Middle East has not happened the way we were anticipating, that the Hezbollah will become very, very violent, Houthi rebel will become very violent, Iran may not jump, and possibly the Hezbollah will be going against Israel. But that has not happened. In fact, the Iran is now ready to negotiate with US. So there is a different condition which is now prevailing also in Middle East, especially once the President Jeskian has shown that inclination towards some sort of understanding between Iran and US. To me, it looks like that. I certainly say if there is a pressure which can work on Netanyahu, it is a domestic pressure only. And I also agree that domestic pressure is also double-edged. In the sense, there are people which are there, which are coming on the street, which are relative of these hostages and the common people. Also, there is a right wing within the government which is supporting Netanyahu. They are against having a ceasefire. So it is a very, very delicate situation for Netanyahu also, in case if he does not listen to his coalition partner, his government can again fall. But certainly to me it looks like that the Yahya Sinwar, in case the pressure can be put on also Hamas by the US indirectly, and they agree that the Philadelphia corridor will be where the Israel will be having its say, I think that is the only point where you can reach some sort of a negotiation and ceasefire. Otherwise, it will continue. But certainly, one thing is very certain: the US will not ditch. US will keep on pushing Israel, but it cannot happen like UK that they will stop exporting weapons, because the reason is simple: the election of the president are in November, and Netanyahu knows it very clear that in case a Republican candidate wins, and especially Donald Trump, then he will be having a lot of advantage. And therefore, Joe Biden is under tremendous pressure. He will keep on supporting Netanyahu, he keep on giving weapons, but he will keep on also criticizing him that he's not going all out to have
one actually wonders if that's just posturing on part of President Biden and lip service, to the Palestinian cause, because clearly, there has been no let up in weapon supply from the United States to Israel. Let me bring in Itai at this point. Itai, what do you make of the fact that Britain has announced it will immediately suspend 30 of its 350 arms export licenses with Israel because there is a risk that such equipment might be used to commit serious violations of international humanitarian law. Now, this is a significant step that has been taken by the UK today, which the Israeli Prime Minister has described as shameful. What do you make of it?
Yeah, it is disappointing in a sense because it entails two problems, this decision. One is claiming that Israel is carrying out war crimes, and I think, and we've seen military experts, not people who are propaganda, but people who understand warfare, have repeatedly said that Israel is acting like no army before when it is trying its best to keep out of harm's way uninvolved civilians. Yes, it is very difficult when the terrorists are hiding behind civilians in schools, mosques, etc. So to come and allege that there are war crimes, that is one problem. The second problem is this is in the end a price for terrorism, because if we now say that a country that is fighting terrorism cannot get weapons, then we're actually awarding terrorists a significant win. So it carries two problems, this decision, but we're not surprised because we know that the new administration in the UK is more left-leaning, more liberal, and this was in a way anticipated. Again, Israel does not rely fully on external manufacturing. It has its own. Most of the things that are heavy tanks, the defense systems, actually defense systems we sell to Europe. So Europe is today defending itself, for example, with the Iron Dome against the possible attack from Russia. And it will be as if Israel would say, no, we don't want to sell Europe any defense systems against Russia. So I don't think that allies should act this way. I think this is why Netanyahu said it was shameful. I really think the UK should reconsider if they want to be on the side of the people that attacked Nazi Germany, or on the side of people that decided not to supply arms to those who were attacking Nazi Germany.
Okay, I also want to ask you this question. There are many who are saying that Netanyahu might want to drag out the war at least till the time the US elections are over to see who comes into the White House next. Now, of course, it's impossible to tell who's going to win that election. It might be a very close contest. But do you believe that, Netanyahu might be banking on Trump being re-elected to the White House? Do you believe, does Israel believe that, Trump would be, in a sense, a better friend to Israel than Biden has been?
There's no discussion about your last comments. You're spot on. Of course, Netanyahu is banking and hoping on the Trump administration. I think that some of the people who are Trump hopefuls will be in for a few disappointments, because when we see Trump this time, we're going to see a different Trump than we saw in the previous round. Remember, it's going to be a second term. Presidents in the second term have less considerations of re-election. And we know, and it was estimated before, that the second time round, not that he's going to be more lenient against Iran. And again, we haven't said Iran in this conversation. Iran is the main actor. We've mentioned many of their proxies. But I think that one thing Trump will for sure do if he's elected is go strongly for some kind of deal with Iran. Will Netanyahu be happy with that? Probably not. So that's why I'm saying some of the Trump hopefuls in the right wing may be disappointed by the second time round Trump. That said, yes, of course, Netanyahu will look on that administration. He's always had problems and difficulties, and the right has had difficulties with administrations, if it was now the Biden administration or previously the Obama administration, who apply a lot of pressure on Israel for concessions. So that's for sure that he's waiting for that. Is he dragging out the war for that? No, I don't think that is the reason. He is looking for a way to declare the war over. I think we've discussed this before. In the end, it's not that the war is going to be over and Israel is going to withdraw from Gaza, but we are talking about moving into the second phase, which does not entail conquering any more areas. And Israel has conquered practically all of the Gaza Strip, but it's going to be more a routine search and find, looking for hostages, looking for terrorists. So in a way, he's looking to announce the war is over, we've won, now we focus on cleaning out the terrorists, we focus on finding and releasing the hostages, and we are looking for the day after who will come in and help us. I don't think Netanyahu wants the Palestinian Authority. There's a big campaign going on now in the West Bank against terrorism in PA-controlled territories, so that's probably not the solution he wants. But he may do this before the elections also. So I don't think that those two things are tied. I think he's looking for a point of time where he can declare it's over, we've won.
Very interesting. It's over, we've won. But at what point can Netanyahu really afford to claim victory? You know, I mean, if you talk about the objective of wiping out Hamas, many would argue that Israel is far from achieving that objective even 11 months into that war. As we wrap up this discussion, Dr. Zakir Hussain, two questions for you. Number one, is it so easy to just come out and say we won, we defeated Hamas? At what point do you think Netanyahu will truly be in a position to actually be able to say that? And two, to what extent do you believe the outcome of the US presidential election could influence the course of this war?
Number one, that about Netanyahu's policy has reached to its saturation. What he will do except killing the civilians? He has not been able to kill and clear the Hamas. Neither he is able to deter the Hezbollah. They are still as it is, while Iran is also flexing its muscle. So at the end, what I find that Israel has lost many things in terms of image, in terms of intelligence failure, in terms of its saturation of Iron Dome, in terms of its Merkava Dam. So Israel has lost much than what Hamas lost. The glory of Hamas has increased. Even in US, Hamas is being supported. That has been showed by the students. The image is sacked. This is the outcome of the war, and there is no option before Netanyahu. What he can do more practically if we think about this. Second, about election in US. The US has also lost his all hope. What he can do? He can conquer the region. Again, the boundary will shift to other region, and they will start launching the attack on Israel. So Israel is in a perpetual war with Hamas and asymmetric forces and proxies of Iran. So this is now the solution. Solution is only two-state solution, with which I think that if Israel stabilizes, public comes to its sense, they will recognize that only the solution is two-state solution. Otherwise, Israel will remain under perpetual war. And how long USA will keep on funding? 40% of Israeli GDP has gone down, shekel has gone down, its stock market has destabilized, while Fitch has rated negatively from A+ to A. Everything is being destabilized, while arms market is also not being in that condition, because whatever arms it was selling, it has been challenged by the proxies and Hamas. So what I found that is a zero-sum game for Israel, not for Netanyahu. He has done great damage to Israel than himself.
All right, Netanyahu has done more damage to Israel than perhaps anybody else. That's your opinion. Well, there are certainly a lot of Netanyahu critics even at home. Let's see where things go from here. At the moment, of course, there seems to be absolutely no sign of a ceasefire agreement. 6 more hostages have been killed. There is growing anger in Israel. What happens next? That's the million-dollar question. On that note, Dr. Zakir Hussain, Itai Melchior, and Major General Ashwini Savaj, thanks to all of you for joining me on Global Lens tonight. Let's take a quick break here on the show. There's more on the other side. Stay with us.
how do you fulfill that promise? Because ultimately expectations have to be met. If you look at the political landscape, is it really changing for women? And what is the inability of the forces that dead bodies surface but not the living people?
Who am I?
Nobody can crack that mystery.
There is a certain expectation of me.
That's the only contradiction.
Life itself is stranger than fiction.
I was a perfectly normal person born in an abnormal world.
I really didn't understand why is it different.
Just imagine a child who is bullied every day.
Boys school में कुछ लड़का लोग मेरे साथ sexual abuse किए.
मुझे तेरे बारे में सब पता है और मैं तेरा रेप कर लूँगा.
You also start to stigmatize.
अरे ये तो time pass है.
Sex doesn't come in the picture. Sex comes very late. Then there are man-made narratives.
Why do you walk like that? Why do you sway so much? So you can understand the trauma of a person who's trapped in a wrong body.
But nothing can bind life.
We have to reclaim the lost position. We fought for more than 10 years.
Today I'm the mother of the industry.
I'm a first transgender member judge.
You can't walk in everybody's shoes.
This is what I'm comfortable with. They just are what they are.
You become the light yourself.
That is the change that I was looking for.
When I recognize myself, it's a small story, but it's an interesting one.
Welcome back. You're watching Global Lens on News9 Live with me, Neha Khanna. Let's get you the latest on Prime Minister Narendra Modi's visit to Brunei and Singapore. Prime Minister Narendra Modi is on a 3-day visit to Brunei and Singapore with a focus on boosting bilateral ties and enhancing India's capacities in critical technologies, including semiconductors. Earlier today, the Prime Minister landed in Brunei for the first ever bilateral visit by an Indian Prime Minister to the Asian country. While departing from New Delhi, Prime Minister Modi said he was looking forward to his scheduled engagements with Brunei's Sultan Hassan Al Bolkiah and other key members of the royal family. The Prime Minister said, and I quote, "As we celebrate 40 years of diplomatic ties, I'm eager to advance our historical relationships with Brunei to new heights." The Crown Prince of Brunei received Prime Minister Modi at the airport. The visit comes at the invitation of Sultan Hassan Al Bolkiah, the second longest reigning monarch in the world following the UK's Queen Elizabeth II. And there is a lot of mystery and interest in his lifestyle. Bolkiah is known for his impressive wealth and extravagant lifestyle and boasts the world's largest private car collection valued at an estimated $5 billion. With a net worth of $30 billion, largely derived from Brunei's oil and gas reserves, the Sultan has over 7,000 luxurious vehicles in his collection. Amongst these, he owns approximately 600 Rolls-Royce cars, including a 24-carat gold-plated one, a feat that has earned him an official Guinness World Record. The collection also includes around 450 Ferraris and 380 Bentleys. He also owns Porsches, Lamborghinis, Maybachs, Jaguars, BMWs and McLarens. The Sultan also acquired a custom gold-coated Rolls-Royce for his daughter and her wedding in 2007. However, his car collection is just the tip of the iceberg. The Sultan resides in the Istana Narul Iman Palace, which holds the Guinness World Record for being the largest residential palace in the world. It spans over 2 million square feet and is adorned with 22-carat gold. The palace has 5 swimming pools, 1,700 bedrooms, more than 250 bathrooms and more than 100 garages. The Sultan also owns a private zoo housing 30 Bengal tigers and various bird species. He also owns a Boeing 747 aircraft.
It is a wonderful memory. We have been here in Brunei for almost 1.5 years, and it is like India's greatest moment that he visited for first time.
in 40 years, and he is the first Prime Minister to visit Brunei. And it is a great occasion for us, and it is a memory for both and my kid, for family and a kid.
I'd like to say that we are very fortunate to have this moment and we are very blessed to have this.
जी बहुत अच्छा लगा आते ही उन्होंने बच्चों के पेंटिंग को देखा बहुत ही सराहाया और उनको उन्होंने हस्ताक्षर दिया है ये मेरी छोटी बेटी का पेंटिंग है कल रात से बना रही थी और उसको हस्ताक्षर मिला
बहुत उत्साहित हूँ ये चीज़ सुन के कि प्रधानमंत्री पहले हमारे पास आए और उन्होंने हमसे बात की बच्चों के पेंटिंग को सराहा उन्होंने और उन्होंने साइन किया उस चीज़ को तो हमें बहुत अच्छा लगा हम लोग यहाँ 3-4 घंटे से खड़े हुए लेकिन हमारी पूरी थकान चली गई
In our 4 decades of diplomatic relationship, this is the first bilateral official visit by the Prime Minister of India to Brunei Darussalam. It is a historic moment in our bilateral relationship and also for the Indian community in Brunei Darussalam that high-level bilateral engagement between Prime Minister Shri Modi and His Majesty the King is going to take place.
This is a story that has horrified the world. A French man is on trial on charges of allowing scores of strangers to rape his wife after he drugged her. 50 men recruited online are also being tried in the southern city of Avignon alongside the main suspect, a 71-year-old former employee at France's state-owned power utility company. The police counted a total of 92 rapes committed by 72 men, 51 of whom have been identified. The men between the ages of 26 and 74 are accused of raping the 72-year-old woman who her lawyers say was so heavily sedated she was not aware of the abuse that went on for a decade. The presiding judge announced that all hearings would be public, granting the woman her wish for complete publicity until the end of the court case. Her lawyer said she wants to raise awareness as widely as possible of what happened to her so that events like these never happen again. The lawyer also said the trial would be a horrible ordeal for the woman. For the first time, she will have to live through the rapes that she endured over 10 years. The lawyer added his client had no recollection of the abuse that she discovered only in 2020, and yes, it went on for a decade. The woman who arrived at the court supported by her 3 children did not want a trial behind closed doors because that's what her attackers would have wanted, she said. The police began to investigate the defendant, Dominique, in September of 2020 when he was caught by a security guard secretly filming under the skirts of 3 women at a shopping center. The police said they found hundreds of pictures and videos of his wife on his computer, visibly unconscious and mostly in the fetal position. The images are alleged to show dozens of rapes in the couple's home. Investigators also found chats on a site in which he recruited strangers to come to their home and have sex with his wife. Dominique admitted to investigators that he gave his wife powerful tranquilizers. The abuse started in 2011. The husband took part in the rapes, filmed them and encouraged other men to use degrading language, according to prosecutors. No money changed hands, the prosecutors say. The accused rapists include a forklift driver, a fire brigade officer, a company boss and a journalist, and some of them came back multiple times.
A 71-year-old man has gone on trial in France, accused of repeatedly drugging his wife and offering her to strangers for sex over a decade. Dominique Pellicot and more than 50 men face up to 20 years in jail if found guilty. His wife was unconscious and unaware of the rapes, which allegedly took place at their home in Mazan in southern France. Sex crime cases are often held behind closed doors to protect victims, but the wife's lawyer said his client wanted them open.
This is also a way for her to say that one can overcome this challenge, even though today is just the beginning, that this has to be made known, and that shame should switch sides.
A lawyer for Pellicot has told French media he admits to his crimes. Absolutely horrifying. All right, now some news from Namibia.
The country is planning to kill more than 700 wild animals, including elephants, zebras and hippos, and distribute the meat to the people struggling with food insecurity as the country grapples with its worst drought in 100 years. The animals said to be culled include 83 elephants, 30 hippos, 60 buffaloes, 50 impala, 100 blue wild beasts and 300 zebras. That's what the country's Environment, Forestry and Tourism Ministry has announced. They'll come from national parks and communal areas with sustainable game numbers and will be killed by professional hunters, according to the ministry, which says the aim of the program is to help alleviate the impact of drought in the southwest African country. Namibia declared a state of emergency in the month of May as the impact of drought worsened. An estimated 1.4 million people, around half the population, are expected to face high levels of acute food security. The culling program will take pressure off water resources by reducing wildlife in areas where their numbers exceed available grazing and water, according to the ministry. It also aims to reduce the potential for conflicts between elephants and humans, which can increase during drought, when animals search for food and water can bring them into contact with people. Southern Africa is a stronghold for elephants, home to more than 200,000 of them. These animals have also been negatively impacted by drought, with hundreds believed to have died across the region last year as their water sources dried up. Meat from other animals said to be killed will also be distributed to those struggling with hunger, says the ministry, which pointed to people living in rural areas as being particularly affected. More than 150 animals have already been killed, providing more than 125,000 pounds of meat, says the ministry. Namibia is one of several countries across southern Africa struggling with devastating drought driven by El Nino, a natural climate pattern which has led to sharply reduced rainfall in the region and exacerbated by the human-caused climate crisis. A dearth of rain combined with scorching temperatures has led to shriveled crops and soaring levels of hunger for tens of millions of people in the region. Well, that's all the time we have on this edition of Global Lens. Thanks for watching. Do join us again at the same time tomorrow.
जानना है तो देखिए, समझना है तो सुनिए, सीखना है तो पूछिए और कमाना है तो खरीदिए।